Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will announce the date of the Voice referendum in South Australia next week, triggering a 6-week sprint to shore up support for the yes vote. That vote is expected on October 14. Joining me now live in studio is Independent MP Kylea Tink. Kylea, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. So 6 weeks to be announced next week. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think it would be great to have a line of sight on a date because, importantly, what I'm hoping that will facilitate is getting politicians out of the way and actually letting the community have the conversation it wants to have in terms of how we move forward on this. Personally, I believe supporting the voice is the right thing to do. You know, Australians are fundamentally being asked their opinion on 3 key things. Do we think First Nations people should be recognised in the Constitution? Yes or no? Do we think First Nations people, given the government can make laws for them, should have the right to be heard when those laws are being made? And then do we trust the government that then is in place in the day? Because ultimately the government of the day will decide how the voice runs. And I think that's the piece of the debate to date that hasn't actually gotten out there. You know, it's really important that Australians feel comfortable with the idea that the government of the day will maintain supremacy over the voice. They will dictate the shape, the look, the feel of it. And as such, the voice won't have a veto power. All this talk of the potential for the voice to influence water rights or, you know, take land from people, I think that's just muddying it, and it's political interplay. I'm keen to see the community have the opportunity to have that discussion.
So you'll vote yes in support of it?
I will vote yes, okay. Yes. And for my community, what I'll be doing is just making sure that I'm providing as much information as possible to answer people's questions.
Well, what's the community telling you? I mean, we've seen a number of polling over the last few weeks showing that the no vote is likely to get up. But what are you hearing on the ground? Are people talking about the voice?
No, not at all. And actually, I think that's a really important part of the polling. The things that are keeping the people in North Sydney busy at the moment are conversations around mortgage rates, around cost of living, around transitioning to green renewable energy. It's about getting their kids into, you know, accommodation somewhere that they can live close by them. So I actually feel like it's what is going to be the best part of the next 6 weeks is that everyday normal Australians will be invited to start to give some space to this conversation in their mind because, you know, this is important for our nation, and if this doesn't get up, I do think we will be lesser as a nation, and I think internationally we will continue to be seen as a country that has failed to mature and failed to reconcile ourselves with our past. But ultimately, that's not what it's not keeping Australians awake at the moment. What's keeping Australians awake at the moment is the cost of living and how they're going to keep their families moving forward and their businesses operating really well.
What happens if this does fail, though? The Prime Minister has admitted that it is a very big risk taking this to a vote itself. Do you just give up after? What happens?
Australians never give up. And I actually, that's what fascinates me about this whole conversation. You know, the history of our nation has been when people have told us something is risky or we shouldn't step in that direction, we've still gone there because Australians are bold and courageous. And I think we want to back ourselves, you know. So from my perspective, I believe this will get up because I do believe the majority of Australians to this point in time have possibly been silent on it because it's not been their highest priority. And I do believe the majority of Australians appreciate our First Nations heritage and the fact that if we all lean back in on that, it makes us stronger. You know, we'll be able as a nation, we will talk about having 60,000 years of continuous history. So I fundamentally believe that is what is required of our nation at the moment. If we don't go there, as I said, I think the rest of the world would look at us and kind of raise their arms in the air and go, yeah, this is still a really immature country that is unable to reconcile itself with its past and move forward.
All right, well, October 14 is set to be the date.